Hello. I just had my whole stand fall over, so I'm just trying to rearrange everything now. All right, let's see. Just gonna make sure I'm live on the Wafa group and post my link. Gonna share my link real quick. Okay, that looks good. I am live. Hopefully this service stays tonight. All right, hello everybody. How are we doing tonight? I just got done with a cold afternoon preg checking sheep. Our vet came out this afternoon and checked I think there's about 70 ewes that we bred back in, we started in August, and we let them in for 3 cycles, which is, it's 17 times 3, so that would be what, 34, 52, I believe, 52 days. So we confirmed pregnancies in almost everybody. So we'll be starting to having lambs in January. So I'm real excited about that. Looks like everybody's getting on. And it's 8:01. Good. All right. So tonight we're going to be learning about the basic shapes for 3D needle felting. We're going to focus on making a cylinder, a sphere, and a cone. I had to go back and remember the names for 3D objects instead of just calling them, like, you know, circles. It's been a while. So if you are getting ready to join along with me, I'm going to be using just some of my farm roving that I use for needle felting tonight. I have a little pile over here, and as you can see, I always say this about my felting wool. We do have, unlike stuff I use for spinning and putting in my bats, you can see VM, which is vegetable matter, in my roving. Not all of it showing up on the camera, but there's a lot more in this, and that's because it's used for felting. This is going to be on the inside of my project, so I don't really care if there's a little bit of vegetable matter, which is just like bits of hay and straw and things like that that get in a sheep's wool as they live their life as a sheep. So it's all natural, and when we send a fleece off to the mill, they pick it and card it, and carding doesn't get all this out. Some of it does fall out along the way, but a lot of it's tangled in the fibers, and it just doesn't come out in the process. You know, when you're raising sheep for more spinning purposes, some people coat their sheep, some people use special feeders and things to not get so much stuff in the wool. There is also a process that is called comb top, if you're familiar with the different types of wool processing, and it does take more of the vegetable matter out. So it's a great option if you do have fleece with a little bit more VM in it. Hello, hi Janet, I see you just commented there. So I'm just going to be using some of my basic farm blend, which generally the sheep we raise on our farm that I use for the needle felting wool are can be anywhere from Dorset and Hampshire crosses, some Suffolk crosses, a whole bunch of different crosses that we have here, and they're all pretty good for felting. All right, so let's see, 8:04. Okay, we can about get started now, I think. I just like to let everybody have some time to find the video. So if you haven't joined me before, welcome. My name is Shiley. I am from Sheepishly Made, and I am a maker of needle felted items. I make lots of needle felting kits. I also make spinning and felting bats. That's mostly what I do. Do a little bit of other things here and there. I'm I mean, I'm a crafter of all kinds. I also, you know, knit, and I have quilted. I don't currently quilt because wool has taken over my life. But me and my husband raise sheep in Michigan. We're in the thumb of Michigan. We have about 100 sheep, and we have 5 dogs, and I have some chickens too. Do like my chickens. I'm hoping to have maybe 100 here in the next year or so. So I am going to, tonight I'm going to actually turn my camera down so you can see what I'm working on. So let me go ahead and do that. So just hang on here. It's going to be, just so you know, it's going to be upside down from like my view, but it still works out pretty good. And you'll get the gist of what I'm doing. All right, so just hold on there. Flip her around. Okay, just gonna adjust a little bit. All right, and that looks about good. I got my computer here so I can answer questions. If you have any questions, just comment on the live feed, and I will try to answer them as we're going along tonight, or I will go back and answer your questions afterwards. If you want to just comment below, let us know where you're from, who you are. I can see all your little icons up there, but I don't know who anybody is. So let me know who's here. I always like to see who's joining. So if you're going to follow along with me tonight, you know, grab some wool that you can use for needle felting. Doesn't have to be anything super special. We talked a little bit last week that finer wools are not as easy to felt with. I like to use a coarser wool. I'm just looking at my computer here, checking my service because it's getting a little fuzzy. Oh, I've had almost no service with my phone data lately. I'm going to try to use the Wi-Fi for a little bit and see if that helps any. All right. Well, this is what I call core, what we use in the center of projects. So I got my holiday gnome sitting here. And the core wool is on the inside, so it's underneath this red here. The top of this is hollow, so it's just the base that has actual core wool in it, and core wool is just what it says. It's the core of the project. You'll see that term used a few times. Well, it looks like my Wi-Fi sucks even more, so I'm gonna go back to phone. All right. So grab your wool and grab your felting needles. I'm going to be using like a 36-38 triangle tonight. And I have my multi-needle felting tool I also use. I don't know if I'm going to use that so much tonight. But we're going to start with making a cylinder. So this is, in my opinion, the easiest shape to start with. We're just going to do some basic shapes. And if you guys have any requests, we can do some things after as well. So, I like to use just, you know, roving that's in a nice, you know, long piece. And, all right, I'm just making sure my comments. There's the comments. Okay. There we go. All right. Okay, so grab your roving. We're going to start from one end, and you're going to grab it with your 2 fingers, your 2 grabber fingers here. And we're just going to roll it up. I use my middle fingers too to kind of help me with this. You want to roll it when you're making 3D objects. Roll it in a tightest as you can. Very tight. It helps with the felting. You don't have to felt as much after. And I just rolled it all the way to the end. And here's my little end. So I'm just going to grab that and hold it on. And take my felting needle here. And I'm just going to tack that down. Tack the end down first. And see, we already have a shape started. You can see it's a nice little cylinder, but it's very loose. I can pull it apart very easily. So that's why we're going to felt. So this is the easiest part of needle felting, is making your basic shape. All you do is you start felting and you just felt over the whole piece. It can be time consuming, and that's why I like having my multi-needle tool. This one I use 4 needles in. You can get them pretty much anywhere. I order mine on Amazon actually. It does make things go a lot faster, but 1 needle works just as well. Excuse me. So I'm just kind of felting the sides. I'm turning it, and just felting and turning and felting. And you're going to do that over the whole piece. I'm mostly just felting in the center here, like in this section. I'm not getting too far out to the edges because we're going to felt the edges, the sides. We're going to felt the sides like down. So I'm only really felting in this middle section here. And as you're felting, you should see, you guys probably won't be able to see it because my picture's kind of fuzzy tonight, but you should see like the needle marks in your wool. See little bitty holes all over. So you can see kind of where you've been. And when you're felting, I talked about it briefly last week, but you do not want to push your needle like all the way into your project. All you need to do is push it where the barbs are, and sometimes you don't have to push it all the way in. So these felting needles have barbs on the tip from like here. I'll hold it this way. I can get something contrasting. There we go. So from this part down, it has barbs that grab the wool. And most of the time, I push my needle maybe just to the end of the barbs. A lot of stuff that I'm working with that's real thin, I don't use all the barbs either. You don't want to be pushing your needle like all the way through your project and coming out on the other side. Don't do that. That's too much. Just far enough that it tangles the wool. And make sure you're just felting down in and out in the same direction. Don't bend your needle, don't twist it. Your needle will break if you put that kind of stress on it. So once you felt it down on the sides, and it doesn't have to, I mean, you could do the, top and bottoms, you could do that first. It doesn't really matter which part you start on. But I'm going to go to this end here, and it's still, this end is still poofy. I can still pull it apart. So I'm going to felt it. Now I'm holding it up and down like this, grab it along the sides, and I'm going to felt directly down into the cylinder. And just felt all this down. You want to felt evenly across so you get a nice flat surface. I use cylinders a lot while making the gnomes, because that's the main part of the body. And I always say you want to make sure you get it nice and flat, because it's got to stand up. And then I'll go back to the side. I only felted from here to here at the beginning. So now I'll go back and I'll felt the side down where I haven't yet. Just turning and felting and turning and felting. And you can check and see if it's flat enough, make it stand up. And then I'm going to do the other end. So we'll just repeat that process for this end. Just felt evenly across. I'm just going back and forth, moving across the top. Remember, if you have any questions, you can just comment here on the video. I'm hoping my comments are actually coming up today. And that can stand up on the end. So that is a basic cylinder. So you will use this in a lot of different 3D projects you're working on, or you'll modify the shape slightly. There's a lot of things you can do, but these are just basic shapes. You know, if you want to learn more about making a specific thing, there's lots of tutorials out there, many different kinds of kits that are available that tell you how to do, you know, a specific project. So we got our cylinder. Now we are going to do a cone. So I'm going to grab a new piece of wool. Okay, so this is going to be the same process as before. We're going to start from one end, and we're just going to roll it up. Now this time, instead of just rolling straight along the whole thing, I'm going to turn this slightly so it's kind of on a very slight diagonal, so we aren't getting as much wool at the top. So that'll help with the cone shape. I'm not letting the wool get any farther than here. I'm directing it smaller instead of letting it go out wide. So the bottom gets bigger as well as the top getting smaller. And there you can see it's kind of tapered already. And I got my end. I'm going to tack down the end. Make sure that's nice and tacked down. I'm actually going to start at the bottom this time, because the bottom is a lot looser. So I'm going to do the same thing I did in the cylinder for the top and bottom. I'm just going to felt the wool down into the cone. You can hold it upwards so you can felt down. You can turn it sideways, lay it on your mat, and felt sideways. Just gonna go back and forth. Last year I made some Christmas trees. Some of them I did kind of just in this natural core wool roving, and I had them on Etsy. And all I did was do this basic cone shape. Some of them I like sewed beads into them to make it look like, you know, ornaments and whatnot. Made some, did my cones with the core wool and then added green wool on them. There's lots of things you can do for Christmas coming up. You can make some needle felted ornaments for your tree. I'm just felting that all down. So that's nice and flat. I can stand it up like the cylinder. And now we're going to do the same thing like we did before along the sides. We're just going to felt down the whole side. I'm not felting quite all the way down to the tip yet. Just felting along the sides, turning and felting. Okay, felt it all the way around it first. Now I need to felt the top here. If you're finding that your cone shape is uneven and it's not, you know, a nice even cone all the way up, you can always add, you know, more wool where you need it, or felt a little bit more in an area. If it needs to be skinnier, you can felt it a little bit more, and that'll help. Okay, now for the top of the cone here, I'm gonna felt a little bit less aggressively, is what I like to call it. So I'm gonna felt gently, because I only want to felt the wool I'm working with. I don't want the needle to go through the tip of this cone like that and into my mat, because all that will do is push the wool fibers down into the mat, and that's not going to help you. So be gentle, feel what your needle is doing, feel how far it's going into the wool. If you need to, just gently push the needle in, feel the resistance of the mat underneath, and just gently felt. Let the wool work for you. If you have any questions, make sure you comment so I can answer while we're going. So see, that's made it into a nice tip. Now, if you can see how my cone, after here, it kind of tapers away a lot faster. You can add more wool here and actually make it a little bit bigger if you want it to, you know, look more even. And all you would do, take little pieces of wool at a time and just wrap them around. You just add more, and then you would just felt that down like you were doing before. And you would just do the same thing, so you can have a nice cone. Try it out, make some Christmas trees. That's a really easy project. They don't have to be anything fancy, just nice little cones. Are really cute. Put some green wool on them. Make a little star for the top. You can even put a string on it and hang it on your tree. Have fun with it. There. So there's a cone. Now the next shape we're going to do is a sphere. And they all really use the same basic principles. It's just how you shape it. And the shaping, you know, a lot of it comes from your felting needle. Some of it comes from how you use your wool. I'm just going to divide that roving a little bit more so it's a little bit skinnier, so I can work with it better, making a sphere. So same concept, you're going to take a new piece of wool and we're going to start rolling it. I like to push the sides in as I'm rolling it so it gets more of that, you know, a ball shape. So I'm rolling and kind of turning it and rolling, and then at one point you can even wrap the wool around if you're having a hard time rolling it into the shape you want. But it does go tighter if you can kind of roll it on your mat. And it's not going to be perfect. It's harder to make a sphere than anything else. But the good thing about it is that you can add more wool to it where you need to after you get your basic shape. That's what makes it easier. So I'm just going to do a small one. And I'm just going to start, make sure my end's tacked down here so it doesn't unravel. And just felt over the entire surface, the whole 360. Just start and felt over the whole thing. Just roll it around on your mat and felt that all together. Watch your fingers. And just make sure as you're felting that you're still just pushing the needle the far enough that you need to, just to the barbs. See, I'm going in about that far, you can see. So you just want to continuously turn and felt all over. Turning it and felting really helps make it into the sphere shape and make it an even sphere. And you should be able to kind of see where you've been. When you're using a coarse needle, it generally leaves needle marks that you can see, at least right away. Okay, so that one actually turned out pretty good. Now, I'm going to make it so it's not as perfect here. It's not perfect, but not as circular. I'm going to make it a little bit flat. So, this guy now is a little bit more squatty. So what you can do to help with that is you can take a little bit of wool, just a little bit at a time, and I'm just going to wrap it around that point that needs to be a little bit fatter there. Just going to wrap a little wool around it and felt it down. Do a little bit at a time, less is more when you're needle felting. Just going to felt on that whole piece. And just make sure you're continuing to turn and there. That kind of fixed it. So that is an easy way to make a sphere. A technique that I like to show you the most is how to wrap it nice and tight, because that saves you a lot on felting. Because if you're not wrapping it tight, it's gonna take you a lot longer, because if I just like fold this thing over, I can like squish it all the way between my fingers, and you're gonna have to felt that, and then it's gonna look flat, and then you're gonna try to turn it, and it's just not gonna work as well. Rather than wrapping it really, really tightly into this nice little cylinder, or whatever shape you're working on. Wrap it nice and tight, and then I cannot squish that together very much, and that's going to speed up your felting process a lot. So I don't see any more questions right now. So we've got the sphere, the cylinder, and the cone. see that there. There we go. You guys can see that. All right, let me check comments. Okay, I see Cheryl. I've had to refresh to see comments tonight. Cheryl, you said, can you please repeat what you said about core roving? I'm not sure what part I've said a lot about core roving, so if you could be a little bit more specific. I don't know if it's like what my core roving is. And Janet, yeah, wrapping tightly does make a big difference. The other thing can be, I'm going to turn you guys up here so you can see. Same means of staring at the blank table. So wrapping tightly does have a lot to do with it. It helps tremendously. But also your felting needles. So your felting needles, you should have, you should be using a coarser needle. So I usually only use triangles as my felting needles. There's also stars that are good coarse felting needle. I use a 36 or 38 triangle, and that works just fine for me. But if you've been felting a lot, they might be wearing down. So you might want to replace it. Make sure your needles are really good. But yes, I know as I'm wrapping and doing that for a while, my hands do start to cramp up, and it is hard on your hands trying to do that. But just take your time when you're doing it. Just do it real slowly. I keep reaching that way and it's blocking my camera. You just want to start from the end and make sure you're just wrapping real tight. And the other thing is making sure it's even all the way across. So my roving, this comes straight from the mill, and it is pretty even across. Sometimes the sides are a little bit thinner than the middle, so sometimes you don't get a nice even, wrap, or, when you're rolling it, it's not as even all the way across. Your ends might be a little thinner, which is okay because the ends, you can felt those down pretty good. If you're not getting the exact shape you want, try adding a little bit more wool, little bit at a time. That helps a lot. Is there any different shapes or anything you guys are interested in seeing? Okay, Cheryl says she would like to know the difference between core roving, felting roving, or spinning roving. So, I mean, it depends on what wool you're using, because honestly, there is so much different kinds of wool on the market, especially for needle felting. There is just so many different kinds. I honestly think that a coarser wool is better for needle felting, because finer wool takes a lot longer to felt with, just because the fibers are real thin compared to the coarser roving or coarser wool, and it takes a lot longer to felt. But core roving, most of the time it is not as high quality that you would use for spinning, because it's coarser wool. Felting wool should be a little bit coarser. Doesn't have to be crazy. There's some much more coarser wool breeds out there that I wouldn't use necessarily. But core roving, like what I use specifically, it's from my sheep on our farm. I just have their fleece made into roving, and the sheep I use for needle felting. I do not coat my sheep. They are exposed to a lot of vegetable matter, a lot of straw, a lot of hay, and so that gets stuck in their fleece, and it's in my roving. So you can see the little pieces of stuff, maybe. If it wasn't so fuzzy in the computer screen, I guess you can see it a little bit. I have more VM. And if you're spinning, you don't really want that much in there. And that's why, you know, spinning wool is higher quality than needle felting wool a lot of times. Some needle felting wool you'll get and it doesn't have a speck of VM in it, which is totally fine. But this is just what I use. Definitely. Oh, and core wool specifically, core wool, generally you're using for 3D felting because it's going to be inside of your project and you're not going to see it on the outside. Like on my gnomes, the core wool is used on the base of my gnome. So the other point of core wool is that it's not dyed, so you're not spending that extra money on the dyed wool, because dyed wool is going to be more expensive than your core wool because it's more expensive to make. You put more time and effort and materials into dyed roving. And you're going to use more core because this red on here is very, very thin layer, just enough to cover up the core roving underneath. What else do I have here? Just grabbing my basket of little felted items here. Pumpkins. So I used the core roving to make my pumpkin shape first, and then I added this purple color on top of it. It conserves your, you know, more expensive, your dyed colors. And my core roving also is not pure white because my sheep are a lot dirtier. So a lot of times it's a little bit more yellow than like this is like a pure white. And this is the core roving I use. So you can see a difference in the color there, which this is clean. This is cleaned at the mill, so it's clean. When I dye it, there's a little bit more stuff that like will come out of it. But like for needle felting wise, it doesn't hurt anything. I'm not wasting my wool either. I try to use every bit that we can. So I hope that answers your question a little bit better. Let's see. Yeah, and Jen, if it's a little lopsided, remember to try felting, you know, felting more on the part that you need to change. Add a little bit more wool. Use a little bit of wool at a time. All right, anybody have any more questions? Or would you like to see anything else before we're done for the night? Let me know, comment. So this is part 2. Next Monday will be the last session for now. And next week we're going to be doing wool painting, which is some of the stuff you see behind me here. I don't know exactly what we're going to do yet. We're just going to do something simple and easy. But if you're going to join me next week for wool painting, you're going to need a piece of background fabric, which I feel like I don't have anywhere close by. All right, you can see it on this. Oh, this one right here. So this guy, I just have it like on a background piece and I hung it up on a stick. But this is actually pre-felt. I'm using actual wool felt fabric a little bit more than pre-felt because pre-felt likes to pull apart on you. But if you have any like felt, excuse me, you can use the felt. Some types of like cotton fabric, sometimes they work. Like a wool fabric will also work depending. My suggestion to test it out is to get a little piece of your fabric and put it on like your felting mat and just like poke it with the needle. And if it leaves like a big hole, you're not going to want to use it. If it doesn't really leave a hole, that'll be all right. Don't recommend using those fabrics all the time, but if you are looking for something to use, that would work. Or pre-felt or felt fabric, that would also work. So I will come up with something that we will do next week. And we'll do some wool painting. So this is just 2D, just like, you know, you're making a real painting, but it's with wool. So we'll do that next Monday, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern. And if you think of any more questions, feel free to comment on the video and I'll check back on it and make sure I answer your questions. But thank you for joining me tonight. I really enjoyed it, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.